quick summary of NST Audio and our products and what we're about and what we do, and kind of explain why we're different and what we do that's kind of special. So this is kind of the quick whistle stop tour in 20-30 minutes for that. So I founded NST 11 years ago. We are based up in Malton in North Yorkshire, in the middle of nowhere, where it's absolutely beautiful, but miles from everywhere. It's a great place to be in the sun when the sun's shining and stuff. Not so great when you have to travel all over the world like I increasingly have to do these days. My background, kind of how I ended up this place, is I did a degree in acoustics at Salford University, and then ended up very soon after at BSS Audio, and I was part of the R&D team that developed Soundweb London. So I got a pretty steep crash course in how you design pro audio equipment and what open architecture DSP is and all that kind of stuff. And after BSS, I did a sort of my apprenticeship with Turbo Sound and XTA. I designed sound level meters for a bit before I founded NST. Historically, the company's kind of been based mostly in live sound. That's where a lot of our early customers came from. But these days, the vast majority of what we do is to do with installation. And as I'll mention again later on, I've kind of stopped designing products for either install or live sound specifically, because it seems that customers don't pay any attention to what you intend them to do with them, and they put installed products in live sound racks and vice versa. So we've also got kind of involved in high-end residential and cinema systems recently, which is possibly an area that some of you guys have got involved in too, and I'll talk a little bit about how we've ended up there as well. So just a quick history on NST. We start companies, and nearly every decent company starts either in a garage or in a loft. This one started in a loft, and that's me about 10 years ago, with piles of product and scope and all the rest of it stacked around me. And this is the view in the opposite direction, with my kids putting fuses into product and things like that, because child labour's not a problem in the UK. If they're your own kids, and and they see it as kind of a fun thing to do to help your dad out. So we ran out of space basically pretty quickly, and so we moved to this lovely set of farm buildings, which were great, apart from being absolutely freezing cold in the winter. And we thought, this is great. We'll be here for ages. And then we just ran out of space in about 18 months. And it got to the point where we're trying to ship pallets out of the door, and you can't get to the kettle, and that's not a good way. If people can't make cups of tea in the UK, not much good happens. So we're like, right, we've got to find somewhere else to move to. So we found our current building 3 years ago. We built it from scratch. It helps that our landlord is a builder. So yeah, we got this built pretty quickly and exactly how we wanted it. Moved in here 3 years ago, and it gave us a ton of space to expand. Part of moving into this building is really this sort of process of going through the pictures you can see here, from being me in the loft to being a proper company. And part of that involves us doing things properly and doing things like ISO 9001 certification, so that we've got processes for everything. We do things consistently. And I know it's not terribly kind of popular in this industry, but I think the ISO 9000 is a pretty important thing, because it means that I'm not just telling you that we do all these things to keep the product consistent, and to make sure that we've got safety testing and all the stuff that we should do. We've got somebody coming in who's actually inspecting us and checking us everywhere to make sure that we are actually doing what we're telling you that we're doing. So the principles of the company are sound quality is a big part of it. We've always been based at the sort of the high end of the live sound business. That's where we started off. And what we try to do is keep that kind of sound quality there for everything that we do, not just the not just the live sound products, but the install products as well. We don't really make any differentiation in terms of sound quality. We use the same converters and everything for both, for those install products and for the live sound products. The install products, we try to make exactly the same as the live, but with more install friendly features. Basically, we see them as a kind of a variation of the same thing. We want to do the same things, but there's certain things that you need to do in an installation setting that you don't need to do in a live setting. One of the important things about what we do is the touring build quality. That's one of the things that we really try to emphasize to customers. Yeah, we have a 5-year warranty on everything. To be honest, we hardly see anything ever back at the factory. We export over 90% of what we build, and because of that, we have a pretty rigorous test procedure before anything goes out the door, because once it leaves the country, it's pretty expensive to bring it back in, and we don't want to do that. So every product, when it gets built, gets fully tested, calibrated. It goes on soak for 2 days, gets turned on and off several times to give it thermal cycles. Then it gets tested again before it gets packed. And that happens to every single product. And that's one of the things that helps keep our failure rate very, very, very low. The other thing that we try to offer, there are some other larger DSP companies, which I shall remain nameless for the purposes of this conversation, who are pretty big and corporate these days, and they tend not to offer quite the same level of service and support that we do. And that's something that people that have worked with us will verify, is that if people need help for an install and support, we are there to provide that, and it's an important part of what we do. So let me just have a quick rattle through the products that we make, and where we've come from and what we do. So the business really started with these two products. They're the traditional 4-in-8 out loudspeaker processors. They've got analog and AES3 on inputs and outputs. You can switch the inputs and outputs in pairs. This is the 3rd generation of these products now, because they're still extremely popular. Although everybody gets excited about the latest and greatest products, there's still an awful lot of 4-in-8 out processors that get sold. The biggest change that we've done in recent years is move over to ESS converters, and that's been a very successful move, and we've got a very good relationship with ESS now, and they listen to us quite a lot, because we're one of those annoying customers that finds pretty much everything that they haven't found in their testing. But we've had a lot of support from them as well, and that's helped improving with stuff that's actually coming up in the next few years with some of their new products as well. The only difference between these two products on your screen is that one has front panel controls and the other one doesn't. There's an awful lot of people out there that aren't really interested in front panel control anymore. In fact, they prefer not to have it, because it means that people can't fiddle with things that they shouldn't do. So that is absolutely the only difference between these two, is the front panel. An awful lot of, we'll come on to software later, but there's an awful lot of people that would just prefer iPad control, which every product we make has. So if you've got iPad control, they're like, why do I need a front panel? And that's why we make these two different versions. We've got all the kind of standard processing, every kind of crossover type you can imagine, all filter types, 2-stage limiters, clip and RMS limiters. We've also got an input section with dynamic EQ, with parametric EQ, compressor on the input, which is, to be honest, generally used for taming DJs slightly when they get a little bit overexcited with driving levels rather too hot into a system. So FIR filters on the outputs as well. So these processors have pretty much everything that's needed as far as loudspeaker processing goes. They run at 96 kilohertz standard. We've got over 119 dB input to output analog, and one of the other things that's quite unusual about our products is the latency is very, very low. It doesn't matter in every situation, but there are some where it does, and it's something that we've tried very hard in more recent products to try and keep latency as low as we possibly can. Because our philosophy on these kind of processors is that they should add absolutely nothing to the sound other than the settings that you've put into the DSP. So adding latency, adding any kind of coloration to the sound is something that we try very, very hard not to do, and we don't. I mean, these processors are flat between about 5 hertz up to about 32K, plus or minus about 0.2 of a dB. But they're very, very flat on the frequency response, very low latency, and so the only things that you get out of the outputs are the things that you've added in the DSP. The DM88 processor is our very latest product, and the reason I put it at this point in the presentation and not right at the start is because it's kind of in between the live sound and the install products, in that from our sales so far with this product, it's probably gone about 50-50, some into installs, some into live sound. What it really is a system processor. It's what it says. It's a front of house processor, effectively. So we've used it at Glastonbury as a front of house processor to switch between desks. We've used it in installations like the O2 in Leeds that I'll show a little later in the presentation, where again it's been used as a front of house processor, but it's also used for house EQ and for routing signals to various other points in the venue. It's kind of an in-between between a fixed architecture and open architecture product. There are fixed signal blocks, of which there are 8 input processing blocks and 8 output processing blocks. But the routing between those and the 8 analog in, 8 analog out, 8 in, 8 out AES, and 16 in, 16 out Dante is completely flexible. So you can route anything to anywhere within the processor. And that's kind of where the power of this product comes from, in it being a very flexible processor that, if you have somebody turn up that says, oh, I need to get these 2 AES channels onto the Dante network, you can do it without having to scrabble about in your bag to try and find a format converter. So this product is the first in what will be a whole series of products, both live and installation, over the next few years. It's been an entirely new DSP engine built from scratch, which is going to serve us for a whole variety of different products that are coming. Really, because the previous DSP engine, we ran out of horsepower, and we wanted to do things that we just didn't have. The flexibility. We wanted higher channel counts. We wanted, we wanted to be able to do bigger FIR filters and things like that customers are asking us for, and we've kind of really achieved that with this processor. So now we can get on with using this foundation and moving forward. I should have mentioned earlier, the failover on this is another feature. So it gives you automatic failover between Dante channels, AES channels, and analog channels in any configuration that you want. So it means that in a live situation, you can have your backup automatically, switch automatically to your backup without having to have any manual intervention in the case of a disaster or Dante going wrong or anything like that. Again, it's 96 kilohertz as standard, because I feel quite strongly about 96K being the only pro sampling rate. The dynamic range is again excellent, all ESS converters throughout all of this, and we've kept the latency extremely low on this as well. So that 0.615 latency is all processing in the chain, analog in to analog out latency, which is again pretty low compared to a lot of other products out there. Just before we go into the installation stuff, what our installation products are really aimed at is high-end, small to medium installs. Clubs, bars, restaurants. I'll show a few installs towards the end of this presentation. Of the kind of things that we've done, some of the stuff, actually a couple of American and a UK installed are very typical. but this small to medium size high end install is really what we go for. And there are places basically where the audio performance matters, but you also need the requirements for an install, with iPad control, remote wall panels, fire alarm mutes, that kind of thing, Dante compatibility, that kind of thing. But we want to keep our signature of making it sound better than pretty much anything else out there. So our standard, our most common processor is the VMX88, which is a 8-in, 8-output fixed signal path processor with everything on creeping Phoenix connectors on the back. Again, ESS converters. So the VMX88 has 8 analog in, 8 analog out with 8-in, 8-out Dante as well. The signal processing architecture is basically 8 input channels processing to a big matrix in the middle, and then 8 channels of output processing. The Dante outputs can be selected from multiple points in the signal path, which gives you a degree of flexibility when you scale multiple processors together. We've got a separate matrix for both Dante inputs and analog process channels, which again enables flexibility when you sort of use multiple processors in an installation. 96 kilohertz sample rate is standard. That's switchable. Basically, the clock runs off the Dante clock, so you can clock it to be compatible with whatever else you've got in your networked audio. Low latency. Again, we have up to 100 user presets. Basically, they can be used as a combination of various parts of the system, or there are other options with the wall remotes that I'll come to in a minute. The VMX88L is exactly the same processor, but without a Dante card in it. So if you just need 8-in, 8-out with no Dante, that's the processor for those kind of applications. There are GPI ports in the back, configurable for fire alarm mute and preset recalls. But the real strength of the VMX and the VMO, which I'll come on to a second, processors comes with the remote wall panels. The VMO16 is really obviously the sort of sister product for the VMX88. It's basically a 16-channel process DAC. So you have loudspeaker processing on every single channel and a huge matrix on the start, 16 by 16 matrix to be able to route any Dante input to any Dante output, to do mono sums, which is one of the things that's important for doing Dolby Atmos systems in high-end home cinema and things like that. Really what this is used for is as an output expander. So it enables us to do installations that have got an awful lot of output processing channels, but not too many input processing channels. So a couple of which I'll show in a second. This has even higher dynamic range because it's only the DAC. So we've got 122 dB of dynamic range on this, and very low latency again because it's only the DAC. 96 kilohertz sample rate is standard, but again it can be switched in the Dante properties. So the strength of those processors really starts to come when we start with the remote wall panels. So small and medium installations, we have we have an API to be able to control via other third-party control devices, but in a lot, you don't necessarily want to have to program a Crestron system if you just want to turn a couple of gains up and down, and that's what these remote panels are for. So the VR1 was our kind of first foray into these products. PoE powered, basically enables you to control volumes, record presets, and basically simple system control from multiple. So you can do multiple controls on a single screen. You can probably see those 2 arrows on the screen. And you can scroll left and right to the various pages for the different controls. It's fully configured in our DNet software, so you configure the entire system through our DNet control software, and this just really enables very basic control. The VR2 is the sort of the response to all of the customer, can you just do this type requests. Again, it's PoE. You can operate multiple of VR2 remotes on the same network alongside VR1 panels if you want to. Full color touch screen with illuminated bezels down the sides, so you can do multiple. So you can, and it means you can do with this. You can do multiple user levels. So you can have, for example, a regular bar staff can just turn the volume up and down, but then there's a locked managers area where they can select different sources. So it has this is a surface mount box rather than a recessed mount, but that enables us to make it compatible with pretty much every wall mount box in the world, which is one of the problems that we ran into with the VR1 trying to do a recessed mount box. You can also customize these panels with logos of the venue, which is something that they absolutely love if they walk and see their venue on it, because they think you've done loads and loads of work to make something very special for them, and all you've really done is load a JPEG off their website. We've also got the V-Remote app for the iPhone and iPad. It works on both. The configuration is stored on the system, so basically you just download the V-Remote app off the App Store, and then if you've got a VMX88 on the network that has a V-Remote configuration file in it, as soon as you go onto the network, it will download that file out of the VMX88 and present the user interface that you've programmed it with. This gets around the problem that I know that BSS users have run into, where if the iPad that was programmed with the configuration file dies or is out of battery or anything like that, you end up stuck. That's not something that happens with this. And to ask the obvious question, yes, you can passcode lock things so that not everybody can just download it and go automatically to alter your system settings. It means that for the user that there's no setup needed. They just download the app, go online, and everything just works. The same controls as you can use with VR1s and VR2s. You can do preset recalls, adjust gains, control source selections, and monitor meters as well. And again, multiple pages, multiple users for security reasons. Again, you can also customize with the venue logo, so the pages can appear with their logo at the top of the page, so it looks a bespoke experience for the customer. Every NST device also has a UDP API, which is a very cut down version of the one that we use with our DNet control software. We don't put it on the website by default, because we found that a little knowledge can be a very dangerous thing with some customers. So the ones that know what they're looking for ask us, and we have the document ready to send them. It's really intended for use with third-party control systems, although the third-party control stuff is something that we're working on quite a lot at the moment, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to have announcements for Crestron and a few other control systems at ISE in February. The control protocol works with all NST products, including some of our OEM ones, and basically it's get set commands for gains and mutes, and preset recalls. The DNet control software is a free download, available for PC, Mac, and iPad. There's full functionality on all three versions. The iPad is not just a cut down version, everything works. And one of the really important things that we've tried to maintain throughout is that it's fast, easy, and intuitive to use. And we're only ever going to stick with V-Remote as our control application. I don't really want to become one of those companies that has 4 different control apps depending on which product line you're working with. It needs to be fast. We spend quite a lot of time trying to make sure that it works fast, because again, it's one of the hangovers from our live background. We need things to work quickly, and we need people to be intuitive. It needs to be intuitive so people aren't ringing us up. There's a whole bunch of power features built into it, and Waring has written countless documents that it seems that mostly only the Germans ever read, but that they are there. So there's full documentation on all of the software, and yeah, the real-time metering is an important thing. You can put dozens of devices online at a time, and it makes absolutely no difference to the metering speed whatsoever. Yeah, the software works with all products. The auto discovery, so there's no need for any configuration when you go online. If you just plug devices into a network, they will find an IP address either via DHCP or via linked local IP addresses, and then you just press the online button and it will find everything on the network. This is partly to make it easier for the users, and partly so that us and our distributors don't get support calls on how do I go online to units. You can also secure devices by setting lock passwords to stop people tinkering with things that they shouldn't be tinkering with, and locking out either some or all of the functionality of a unit. And in those cases, occasionally we get people asking us, can you unlock this unit? And the answer is yes, we can, but we do quite a lot of checks before we ever unlock anything. Normally the process is we go back to the person that we sold it to, because we keep a record of where we've sold everything to, and we go through the process of finding out whether that person actually should be allowed to unlock it or not. And normally it's possible to find that out relatively easily. So finally, just a few installs that we've been involved in relatively recently. The first one is this is the main club at the Fontainebleau Casino in Las Vegas, which, as you can see, is a typically understated, low-key kind of venue. The picture on the right here, I thought rather than take a picture of the rack, this is the cabling above the rack, which gives you an idea of the kind of scale of this install. I think this has got about 100 odd NST channels with VMX and VMO devices in this venue. There's a lot. It's a typical high-end club where they've got lots of VIP areas and they all want their own controls and all the rest of it. The cable in the venue is the kind of thing that gives me nightmares. This is another Las Vegas casino with a Tal Beach Day Club. Is this one? This one's actually got a QSYS Core 510 as the kind of center of the system, where they do a lot of the routing and control. But then we've got about a dozen of our VMX and VMO processors for doing the loudspeaker processing and the A to D conversion and various other things, so that each one of, I think there's 50 or 60 cabanas around the edge of the pool, and everyone's got its own volume control and source selection and all the rest of it. That's all done through the NST processors. Finally, this is an install that only went in a couple of months ago with a live sound venue just an hour down the road from here, which has got was slightly strangely for me, they took out a whole load of BSS processors and put NST processors in, which is a very strange kind of clash of my past and present lives. This was an install done by Adlib Audio, who are one of the biggest touring companies in the UK, but also maintain a lot of venues in the north as well. And they somehow managed to include one of every single product that we make in this venue. And it was also one of the first venues in the UK to have a DM88, which is being used for desk switching, routing, processing, and control. So they've got basically the VR2 that you can see in the rack there has presets on it, so that the in-house staff can switch between the house desk and guest desk without having to do anything else. Basically, there's just two presets. It's recalling in the DM88 that switches between the two system configurations, which means that they've got a nice, easy control to be able to reroute the system depending on how the venue's being used. So that's what Bill said, 20 to 30 minutes. I think I've just about managed to keep to that. So thank you very much for your attention.